got the car up to the speed limit, which was 45. Approached, BAM! Crossed over the line and hit me head on. Then the car came to a stop in the opposite direction. The driver's door popped open and I saw fluids leaking. So I rolled out onto the highway. I remember I had my cell phone in my pocket, so I pulled it out and I called my wife. I was kind of in a state of shock at that point. Fire department was on the scene within minutes. They take you right into the trauma center where I hadn't been able to tell how well I was functioning. Quite a exhilarating moment when I realized that I survived this catastrophe in one piece, and here was life.
In 1 year, more than 1.3 million deaths worldwide were the result of automotive crashes, more than in 15 years of war in Iraq and Syria. And road traffic injuries are now the leading global killer of people aged 5 to 29 years. Despite centuries of advances that have made our lives safer, healthier, and more secure, one of the greatest threats to our well-being remains hidden in plain sight: the automobile. Human perception is not evolved for current road speeds. Assessing the risks of high velocities does not come naturally. We recoil at the edge of a 30-foot cliff, even when our bodies are in complete control. At speeds of 60 miles per hour, we weave among trucks, traffic lanes, and hills with scarcely a thought of the thousands of fatal risks we take. Our brains are simply not attuned to the speeds that are now part of our everyday experience.
If you're going 65 miles an hour and you hit a concrete wall, once the car stops moving, then you continue to move. Injuries that are related to the negative acceleration within the body. Patients end up sometimes with different types of intracranial bleeding, spinal injuries, spinal cord injuries, intrathoracic and intra-abdominal injuries, internal lacerations or contusions, collapsed lungs, bleeding around the lungs, the hemothorax, pericardial injuries or cardiac contusions, esophageal injuries, tracheal injuries, kidney, liver, spleen, pancreas, bladder, bowel, long bone fractures, femur fractures, hip fractures or hip dislocations, trimalleolar ankle fractures, wrist fractures, head injuries from hitting the windshield, hyperextension injury of the C-spine, spinal injuries on all different levels, aortic injuries or bronchial or tracheal injuries from the movement of the heart and mediastinum. If it moves too violently, you can get tears. Anything that we have can be injured in an automobile accident. The average length of stay for all comers of vehicular trauma is about 3.5 days. ICU patients or the operative patients, that length of stay becomes about 7 to 8 days. Their recovery may go on for months. Patients who suffer paralyzing spinal cord injuries or major intracranial hemorrhage and things like that result in permanent brain damage. Recoveries last years or never even really truly occur. I was in a car accident and I survived, but my friend who was seated next to me or my friend who was driving or children of the car that was also involved in the accident died. How do you live with that emotionally? Emotional injuries can be very severe. The family comes in and we have to tell them that their loved one died. We have to explain that their son or daughter or husband or wife or parent is now paralyzed. Where the patients, the injuries have a significant emotional impact, before the accident you were out playing tennis, and now you're in a wheelchair, being fed through a feeding tube in your stomach wall.
Today, street safety is mostly a privilege for those with a driver's license. Pedestrians, cyclists, children, and the elderly, in most cities, their safety is little more than an afterthought.
If we tell a 3-year-old child anywhere in the world, watch out, a car, the child will jump in fright. And with a good reason, because there are tens of thousands of children who are killed by cars every year in the world.
If we want our children to grow and stay in these urban environments, at what age do they become free to move across the city without the fear and stress of, can I cross this road safely?
We know that driving is the most significant risk we pose to ourselves and others every day. It's a choice we willingly make, without changing behavior, without protest, and with few demands for systemic change.
It's over 90% of all accidents or crashes has to do with the human, has to do with human errors. The old way of thinking, it's always that we have to teach the people to do the right thing in every situation, to change the people to fit in the system. But we have a system that is about mobility and capacity. It's not about safety. So you're really saying that it's the price you have to pay that you receive these injuries or fatalities, or it's your own fault when it happens. Because we think that if we should do major improvements of safety, then we would damage the mobility. If you're really thinking safety, you can increase the mobility and be more safe.
Design cities around the needs of people, not around the needs of cars. This sounds obvious, but it's exactly the opposite of what we have been doing over the last 100 years.
We may never fully come to grips with the actual risks of driving, but new approaches are being developed to enhance our awareness and at least limit the dangers we face. Adapted to humans rather than vehicles, our cities would look radically different. By working with speed, street design, and human behavior, we might double or triple the volume of people moving through our streets.
Cars and roads together have been designed to make people feel as comfortable while driving as possible. And I think that honestly is a cause for a lot of the accidents and deaths that we have. If you have a car that makes it feel very comfortable to do unsafe things, to reach and touch a screen for a long time, even though the car is engineered to be as safe as possible with all of those safety measures, the fact that it makes you feel safe is bad. Cars and roads should actually make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, because then you'll pay attention. And the way design has been going is really the opposite.
Your main purpose as a driver is not to crash. Now, you may think your main purpose as a driver is to get to where you're going, but if you don't believe me, ask your passenger what they think your purpose is, and they'll tell you your main purpose is do not crash. So the amount of time you can look away while driving is just around 1 second, maybe just a fraction over 1 second. Because during that 1 second of driving, whether you're driving slowly, city traffic, on the highway, the risk of accidents in your brain goes up exponentially. And as more and more electronics come into the car, it'll be interesting to see if those electronics are actually improving our ability not to crash, or if they're really detrimental to our ability to drive safely.
Automation of cars is really about safety, diminishing the human factor, actually.
80 to 90% of the crashes can be eliminated when you bring together this connectivity and this automated capability. Now let's put that in perspective. 33,000 people a year die in the United States on roadways. If you can reduce that by 90%, you've saved 30,000 people a year. So now this isn't just a novelty. This is something that's equivalent to a new drug that can cure a serious disease that's killing a lot of people.
When you think about safety issues, whether it's vision, right, or just delays in response time, or not to make it about a certain age, but make it about distractions with technology, that whether I'm going to answer my phone when I shouldn't be in the automobile, or I'm distracted by the child in the back seat. The autonomous vehicle becomes an interesting, very cold and calculated and clinical device focusing on driving you somewhere safely.
Advanced driver assistance systems continue to proliferate. Designed to sense environments, perceive risks, and alert drivers, these systems will give us some of the capabilities needed to prevent accidents. At the same time, they call into question issues of surveillance, data ownership, and personal autonomy. In the coming years, some speed limits may even be electronically enforced. Using geofencing, a car's software can limit the vehicle's speed, making it impossible to drive unsafely in school zones at certain times. For car companies, these human-machine interfaces represent a significant shift from a century's focus on hardware design. It's a move from physical protection to electronic prevention, from harnessing human bodies to connecting with human minds.
I touch the earth whenever the ground my football makes no sound. Light the flame, light the fire, keys in my hand, ready to burn it down. I ride the fire, ride the flame, move so fast I have no name. Can't slow me down, wind in my hair, ready to run, 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 run. I touch the earth whenever the ground my football makes no sound. Light the flame, light the fire, keys in